In my previous video, I discussed how online dating in your search for a Filipina essentially was a numbers game. In this video, I want to take it a stage further by discussing how to go about speaking and questioning your Filipina intelligently to find out the information that you really need to know about her. So now that you've figured out how to play the online dating game, let's go back to that small pile of genuine, sincere Filipinas that you filtered down to. When I was doing this, I had a set of questions for each one, and they would always be the same. And it went something like this. After the hi, how are you, where you're from, etc. 1. Are you a city or province girl? Now, the obvious answers are that they're either in the city or they're from province, or quite often they are from the province but working or studying in the city. There's a whole separate debate about this to be had, about which is better between the two, but I'm not going to get into that here. If a girl is indeed province, you need to ask yourself whether you are happy to relocate to live there, in which case, what quality of life does that mean for you? If not, and you prefer her to move to the city like Manila or Cebu, will her parents agree to it? Can you support the both of you in that environment? A Filipina in general is very close to her family and usually doesn't want to be too far away from them either. So you're going to have to keep this in mind. Next, have you ever dated a foreigner before or LDR? Now, for me, this is a very important question because it gives an opportunity to find out whether they've had experience with boyfriends, but specifically with Western or foreign boyfriends. Usually, the answer is no, but more commonly nowadays, the answer is becoming more frequently yes, because as the world digitally opens up, online dating opens up opportunity for a whole new breed of young Westerners to come across and meet these Filipinas in person. And this can cause a lot of problems for the next man that comes along. So I usually ask another question to clarify, which is, was this LDR or was this in person? Because if it's in LDR, then they will have had exposure to all things Western guys by having the usual interactions with the foreigner and experiencing all of the emotional ups and downs involved with that, which in itself can be intense. But that's about as far as it's gone. Whereas if they meet in person, this is a whole new ball game that introduces a completely different dynamic into the scenario. Now, in my experience, it's usually ended badly in some form of abuse towards the girl, which is either physically, financially, emotionally, or sexually. The reason is that more often than not, I found if the Filipina has had a relationship with a Westerner in person, the vast majority of the time when I've inquired as to why it ended, it was because either he cheated or he mistreated her. And this can have a potentially damaging and lasting effect on her and how she behaves towards her future partner, such as yourself, with trust issues or being overly possessive. If it's financial, then the chances are that she's been introduced to a standard of living that could be way above what you can afford. And you will hear never-ending stories about how this guy used to pay for this and how that guy helped her with that. And the expectations of all of these things have now been placed upon your financial shoulders. If it's physically, however, maybe he pushed her around or mistreated her in some way, that means that she is afraid of letting go with you, and now you are going to have to prove yourself to her. But the worst is if she's been sexually mistreated or abused or taken advantage of. The worst is if she's been either sexually mistreated or abused in some way or taken advantage of by a guy or guys because she's now afraid to be intimate with you due to some kind of trauma as she was being taken advantage of being young and naive. And now you're the one, again, that ends up paying the price for this. Now, either way, whatever it was, you just don't want the hassle of it. It almost always ends in tears one way or another, and it's likely to be your tears. So I always drill down and try to establish these details to gain a more in-depth perspective on what I'm actually dealing with here. Next question. How long have you been single? This is a very simple, straightforward question, but it finds out the gap between her last exploit and present day, or if she's not had any experience with dating at all. And I must admit, I've been continuously surprised on a number of occasions by the answers of Filipinas ranging from several years of no current boyfriend to having no boyfriend since birth, even with girls in their mid-late 20s, sometimes in their early 30s. And finally, are you working or studying? Now, the answers to this question also depends on their age, because they could be studying or in college up until the age of 23 or 24. And if she's in her teens or early 20s, she may still have another few years of education left, in which case you're going to have to work out how you can be together if you need to be in her town or city until she finishes her studying. Or more to the point, you might be expected to contribute or cover the cost entirely of her studies, as you will be responsible for her. After that point, they could have started their career and found employment of some kind, for example, as a teacher or working in a call center. For myself personally, I'm more comfortable with a Filipina that is working, not just because it shows that she's got the ambition to earn her own money, but because she will be occupied with her time a good majority of the time, rather than hanging around my neck from first thing in the morning to last thing at night. Although I'm quite happy to see a Filipina a couple of days at the weekend and maybe once or twice during the week, which means we can get to know each other quite well whilst keeping our own space, so we don't become too familiar too quickly. However, in the example of a call center, the hours are long. This usually means working through the night 6-7 days a week. And when they get a day off, if they get a day off, they're likely to be so tired that all they want to do is catch up on some sleep, which is understandable. So you're not going to be able to spend too much time with them doing anything unless you learn to change your sleeping habits as well. Just something to keep in mind. Now, on the other hand, you might prefer a girl that's got all of her time free to look after you and be with you, and you may have plans to go traveling together, or maybe you're just happy to have a Filipina with you for company most of the time. Of course, all of these questions are completely subjective to the individual Filipina, but they all help in identifying any potential problems that might turn out to be deal breakers, either on her side or yours. And when I filtered down to a particular girl and we were focusing on each other on a more exclusive basis, I would introduce a topic almost every week to be discussed in detail. And this could range from financial to family expectations to sexual expectations, so that we both had an opportunity to express any wants or needs or concerns that we may have had, to try and find a compromise or a solution of some kind to iron out any creases that may have appeared along the way. It's very easy for both sides to naturally assume that the other person will fall in line with their own expectations, only to find that by the time you eventually meet each other, you could be disappointed as these differences prove impossible to sort out. So be open, be honest, but more importantly, be direct and get to the point so both sides know exactly what the expectations are of the other person. And so everybody is reading from the same page.